Greetings from the set of Metro and More at Metropolitan Community College, serving more than 50,000 students with over 120 programs at our 8 locations in the daytime, evening, weekends, or online. And I'm your host, Kent Pavelka. Welcome again to Metro and More. More of what you need to know about Metropolitan Community College. In this session, we're going to give you the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce second quarter update with the CEO and President of the Chamber, David Brown. Good to see you, man.
Kent, good to see you too.
Second one of these this year. Talk about the second quarter, and things have changed in one respect. I thought for a minute Sean Connery was on the set here instead of David Brown.
Yeah, I wish I had his accent in his bank account, but no, that hasn't happened.
That's nice. It's
it
a
is
good
different.
look on you.
I'm trying awful hard to make it a good look,
Yeah.
but you know, I got a face made for radio, so you just never know.
In generalities, let's talk about the second quarter. How have things gone in 2016?
You know, they've gone well. There was some controversy in the second quarter, but that's expected in a community that's kind of growing the way we're growing. Most of those economic development projects that we've had the larger they get, the more complicated they get. But I think all in all, it was a good second quarter. We're continuing to see growth. We continue to see progress in the things we want to see. So pretty happy with it.
What controversy are you referring to?
Well, we'll talk a bit about some of the economic development projects, but you know, we have the Costco project up near Fremont has caused just a wee bit of controversy. You know, the HDR project was in the throes of controversy in the first and second quarter, and you know that all got resolved with their decision to go in Exarban Village. The legislature always has controversy associated with it, so you know those kinds of things you kind of expect to see happen, but I think in the end, they've all worked out really well.
Did those things get in the way with any particular focus that you had in mind for the second quarter?
No, I don't think so. I think in many ways, what we saw was just continuation of projects that we knew were critical to get done. And so working through them, sometimes you go to plan B. And that's what ultimately had to happen in both the HDR and Rawhide project, or Costco project. And even the legislature, you know, we had some things we wanted to get done in tax reform that just weren't going to happen with the politics the way they were. So, you know, we had some things we had to work through, but I think in the end it was still a good first half of the year, and the second half of the year looks like it's going to be just as robust.
I would imagine in your business, the dynamic aspect of all this is something you got to get used to in a hurry. I mean, things you might have a plan, but you got to change courses and go with what. Yeah. What eventually is going to happen.
I mean, you're my age, and so you can remember the old A-Team TV show where I think the head of that group said, "I love it when a plan comes together," but in that show, a plan never came together. It was always plan B, C, or D, and it's kind of us. You know, we do what we have to do to make the projects happen, and we got to be pretty nimble. And Omaha, thankfully, is of a size that we can do that, and our leadership understands that desire to be kind of footloose a little bit to make some of these projects occur.
Interesting comment there, of the size that we can do that. Does size get in the way of some cities not being able to?
It really does. You know, the more moving parts there are in a project, the less likely it's going to happen. And so if you're in a great big city, chances are there are a lot more organizations that are going to have a hand somehow or another in putting a project together. And every one of those additional actors has an opportunity to make a project not work. We're of a size that we have enough resources to make things happen, and strong enough players to make things happen, but not so many players that they will get in the way of a project and make that project go away. So I think size does matter in this case.
Let's talk economic development numbers now.
Okay.
51 through the second quarter, correct?
Yeah, that's great. So 51 means 51 projects that we have landed because of our work. And so the goal for the year is 65. So we're well past halfway point at the end of the first quarter. So we think we're doing really well on the number of projects landed already this year. About half of those projects are either new companies from startups or new companies to the market. So about half of them are existing company expansion. So we're hitting those numbers too, which is pretty good.
What is the ideal mix there? Startups and new versus expansion?
You know, when we first started doing economic development back in the 90s, even under Target Omaha, we've been doing it longer than that, but we had specific funding for it starting in the 90s. We did about 10 projects a year, and 7 or 8 of them were existing company expansions, and 2 or 3 of them were new companies coming to the market. When we went to the Prosper Omaha and the GO initiative, we wanted to ramp up those numbers pretty significantly. So under the GO initiative, which was the 10 years of the 90s essentially, 2003 through 2013, we brought in 50 projects a year. And the goal was to have half of those be brand new to the market and half of them be existing company expansions. When we moved into the Prosper Omaha decade, which is what we're in now, we had more money, so we raised the ante and said, okay, now we're going to do 60 projects a year, and half of those need to be new to the market. So we're clearly saying that we want to have just as much impact on the size of the market through new companies coming in as we do through helping existing companies grow.
Well, you're obviously going to hit your target, your objective. You had 18 through the first quarter.
Yeah. Now
51. So
yeah, that's kind of how our market is. You know, it'd be nice if it was, guess what, we're going to do 15 every quarter and hit our 60. But our projects, as you know, some of them take 2.5 years to go from a prospect to a landed client. Some take a month. Mm-hmm. You know, so you can't count on when they're going to close. I mean, we can see on average that we think over a year's time we'll close 60 or more, and so that's how we set that goal. And every year we close 60 or more. Knock on wood that we're able to do that.
Job numbers.
Yeah.
Almost 1,200.
Yeah. Goal for the year is 2,500. So we're right on pace for those numbers this year right now. So that means some of the projects that we brought in are smaller. The wages tend to be a bit higher. So we're shooting for companies that have at or above the median wage of the county where they're locating. And so we pay a lot of attention to the kinds of companies we're bringing in and the kind of jobs they're creating. So we're trying to create higher wage jobs. And I can't remember the exact percentage, but it's somewhere close to 70% of the jobs that we've helped create through these projects that we're landing are at or above the median wage for the county they're locating in.
The 1,140 number year-to-date jobs added, is that a net number?
No, it's a gross number.
It's a gross number.
A gross number.
Do you look at net?
We do. So we manage, the numbers tend to be about 6 months off cycle. So right now, probably the most current net numbers will show probably the May, maybe the April, March, April numbers. And we'll show you the number of jobs that are now in our market versus the number of jobs that were in our market a year ago, of all jobs. Okay, so it adds up all of the different kinds of jobs that are out there. It takes each category and says, you know, last month it was at 12 in this category, this month it's at 13, this month it's at 10. Run all through all of that and you end up with an average number at the end of the year for every category. And then you compare it against your current number. And so we've been running pretty consistently 8,000 to 9,000 job net gains year over year.
Even in the toughest years?
Well, in the toughest years, we actually got to 0 a couple of years.
So there have been some huge years.
There have been some big years. Well, so we've had some 9,000, 10,000 years. 2006, I think, was a 9 or 10,000 net job gain year. This year, probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it was in the 8 or 9,000 range when you compare kind of that year to year, December to January or January to December number. I'll bet that we end up with an $8,000 or $9,000 or $10,000 net job gain because our unemployment rate continues to drop. Our labor force participation rate continues to climb. We've got the highest labor force participation rate in the country. 72 or 73% of our able-bodied workers are working, which is highly unusual. I mean, the national average is in the mid-50s.
Wow.
So we're already using the highest number of our adult population as we are of anywhere else in the country. Our underemployment rate is still relatively high. We think there's probably 40 to 50,000 underemployed folks who, if given the opportunity for training or for a full-time job that pays more with benefits, would likely move into a full-time gig. And that doesn't count maybe the 60,000 folks that are working part-time that want to stay part-time. So we have lots of people are working more than one job, and we're trying to figure out a way to move them up into a higher paying full-time gig. So if you look at the numbers in the end, we'll have a lot more people working at the end of the year than we ended up started with.
Perfect. Second quarter numbers, report on the Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce. And now when we talk about capital investment of $124 million, what does that mean?
Well, the goal for the year is $600 million. And so we're a little bit behind on the goal. But if we look at our backlog, the projects that we're getting ready to announce for the year, we'll easily hit the $600 million number.
So the 12 or 13 left, so to projects, you got 51 to 64, whatever the number was, is going to be responsible for all that
well,
increase?
two or three of them could easily get us to $600 million. I mean,
I see.
We'll talk about Project Rawhide or the Costco project here in a second.
Yeah.
That's $300 million all by itself.
Okay.
You know, so you start thinking about the other projects that we have. We know we've got a $30 million project here and a $50 million project there, a $300 million project here. So you start adding up the ones that you know are going to close by year end, and we'll hit our number.
Gotcha.
So we're not concerned about the capital investment number as long as the backlog is good and we understand what kind of projects are in that backlog.
Well, let's talk about Project Rawhide.
Sure.
The
also
Costco,
known as the Costco project, right?
North of Fremont?
It's south of Fremont,
South of
I think.
Fremont, okay.
So it's in the same general location now as the Hormel meatpacking facility that's in Fremont. The audience may recall this because we first looked at Nickerson for this project, which is just outside of Fremont. At the time, the public didn't know it was Costco, and the company was not ready yet to divulge who they were. And so we went to City Council in Nickerson and said, we have a big project. We want to do, $300 million investment, 1,100 jobs. It's a chicken processing facility. We laid out all the information for them. And their council was concerned because they didn't know who the company was, and they had some of the neighbors to the property came along and said they didn't want to see the project happen. So after a no vote from the City Council, we went back and worked with the company and started showing them Plan B, which is one of these Plan B projects we mentioned earlier. And that was a different site, closer to Fremont, that was near an existing manufacturing facility already. And since then, we've had, I think, 8 votes of either City Council or Planning Commission or the Redevelopment Commission, and all of those votes were unanimously in favor of the project. There has been some vocal minority that has said they still don't want the project, but those numbers keep shrinking as the process has gone through all of its approvals. So far now it has received all the public approvals that it needs to move ahead. There is a lawsuit that was filed about it that we think is frivolous and won't go anywhere. And in the meantime, the company is just kind of finalizing their piece, and we'll close on the property hopefully in the fourth quarter of this year. We'll be able to count that as a success then once they close on the property, and they'll start construction on it next spring.
Plan B success.
Plan B work.
So relative to Rawhide and HDR, Plan B's being the reality, what's your feeling about how it's all ended up?
Well, I think actually, let's talk about the Costco project again. I mean, there's two sides of this, there's actually 3 sides of this story that I think are really important. First is, of course, it's agribusiness. So if you can't do agribusiness kind of projects in Nebraska, where are you going to be able to do them? Secondly, of that $300 million investment, $180 million of it is going to be in the plant and facilities, but $120 million of it's going to be on farms. We're going to have more than 200 farmers actually growing chickens for the Costco facility who are today not growing chickens. And so they'll make a $120 million investment and start producing chickens on a 15-year contract for Costco. So we've been able to help a lot of farmers be in the business of diversifying their income stream, because now they'll be, maybe they're corn growers or soybean growers, now they'll also be able to be chicken growers. The third part of it is how much this is going to use. So I think it's 3 million chickens a week that aren't growing anywhere except they will be growing in Nebraska, and about 300,000 bushels of feed a month that'll be going to feed these chickens. So ready market for the corn and the soybeans that we grow here, an amazing use of existing farms to grow new product and new revenue. And then finally, they're going to be paying a higher wage than they're used to in that market. And Costco's a really great community citizen wherever they've been, so we expect to see Costco really investing in that community. So it's a great project all the way around. Plan B worked out just fine in this particular scenario.
Yeah. And HDR?
HDR, you know what, we're thrilled. They announced their new headquarter location in Exarban Village. Exarban Village has been one of our major projects over the past decade or more. It'll fill one of the last great big pieces of ground that's in Exarban Village. So I can actually see the light at the end of the tunnel that all the ground in that development will have been built on, and it's become one of the great places in Nebraska and in Omaha. So they're going to love it there. They're going to have 1,000 people that'll be there, and it's going to drive even more restaurant development and other things in that park. So it's going to be a nice spot for them.
Yeah, you look at the riverfront, downtown Omaha, McSarben and Midtown Crossing, and you know, there's geographical issues to considerations. I mean, everything is developed now.
Everything
nicely.
is developed. You know, and we've got some nice developments coming along. So Conagra will be redeveloped. That property will be in the sometime over the next several months. You know, we'll hear what that plan looks like. It's going to be exciting though to have that redeveloped. Lot B committee has been meeting to try and figure out the parking lot between the TD Ameritrade and the Hilton. What's the highest and best use for that property? So we'll have a plan for that sometime in the not too distant future. The Civic Center is coming down, and that's a redevelopment site for downtown. We've got the old UP site that is still available for redevelopment. And you already mentioned Midtown Crossing, and they're actually starting to develop the ground to the east of Midtown Crossing between 480 and Turner Park. And then Exarban Village, of course, has grown to a huge project and still has a little bit of growing to do. So just those, and then throw the Boys Town project in for good measure, which is probably $1 billion project in the not too distant future. Sterling Ridge, which continues to be under development, you know, the old Ironwood Golf Course. There are a lot of great big projects that are planned or under planning, and let's not forget the river. You mentioned that already. There's a redevelopment strategy being crafted for that as we speak. So there's a lot of moving parts out there right now that could have some really exciting projects happen here over the next decade.
Just think, David, once this all gets done, you can retire.
If it takes 10 years for them to be done, you're right.
I want to talk about a couple of things that are exciting. The United Airlines announcement of nonstop to San Francisco.
That's really exciting. You know, we have a large number of companies here who have their headquarters in the San Francisco Bay Area. And you can rattle some of them off: Wells Fargo, Bank of the West, PayPal, LinkedIn, Yahoo. These are all big companies that are here. Pacific Life, who all have made big investments in this community and have continued to grow those investments. And one of the things that's been a challenge for them is, how do you get back to home base? So
what have they been doing? Mainly Denver?
Yeah, Denver, I think, Dallas, Phoenix, depending upon which might be the easiest one for them. But in the end, you know, we needed to do something about it. The airport authority, to their credit, has been very diligent about adding nonstop flights to a lot of different key markets. So, you know, we added Seattle this past year, and that's been a grand success. We added LA earlier this year. Adding San Francisco is a big deal. It tells the market, particularly the venture capital market and the companies that are in San Francisco that are looking for some kind of a Midwest location, that's another easy place to get to. So we're actually going to be celebrating that. We'll be on the first scheduled flight on September 7th, I think it is. We'll have our economic development teams going to be flying out to San Francisco. We got a party planned out there to celebrate the fact that it's here, and we'll be letting Nebraskans who live in San Francisco and companies from Nebraska who have facilities out there, invite them to a party just to kind of say, don't forget, you got a flight that you can get home really easy.
What's on top of your wish list on the next nonstop that doesn't exist right now?
You know, that's a good question. We got DC back, which was really exciting. The Southwest went back to DC. I'd like to see an international flight. You know, I'd like to see maybe a Vancouver flight or a Montreal flight or a Toronto flight. You know, something nonstop to Canada would be pretty cool.
Have to change the airport's name then.
I know, Epley International. I know, which would not be a bad thing.
It would not.
I frankly would love to see Omaha in there somewhere.
Well, I know
Omaha is Epley International or something. But,
yeah, really.
You know.
But that's been suggested, I mean, for a long time.
Yeah,
is there reticence to do that? Or?
It's just a matter of having to have a full-time customs officer here if you're going to have a commercial flight that's going to fly all the time. And we have customs capability for freight right now, but to have passenger on a regular basis, you got to have the whole customs capability. So, but
well, if you could get the Omaha attached to the international part, it would be worth the investment, wouldn't it?
I believe so.
Yeah,
I believe so. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Rise of the Rest tour. Explain that for our viewers.
Yeah. So for the last several years, Stephen Case, who is one of the founders of AOL, has been going to markets that are not necessarily well known for entrepreneurship, and he's been having sort of pitch sessions with startups in those communities, and then providing a $100,000 investment in the company that wins the pitch session. He's coming to Omaha this year. He's doing Omaha Lincoln this year. And so we're going to be lining up. There'll be local entrepreneurs, startups lining up to give demos, if you will, to Case and his team, and try and become the winner of it's called the Rise of the Rest Tour. It's kind of assuming that not everybody is going to be Silicon Valley or Austin or Boston Route 128 or even Boulder. You know, they're going to be places like us that are generating a lot of startups, but just aren't as well known as some of the other places.
Sounds like a good reality television prospect, doesn't it?
It really does, and I'm surprised someone already hasn't followed them around with a camera. But you know, we've been really aggressive on the entrepreneurship front. We're seeing a lot more activity. Nathan Preheim, who is our entrepreneurship director, he's an entrepreneur in his own right, and working really well within the ecosystem. So this is another good way for us to kind of highlight that Omaha's got some really cool stuff going on when it comes to entrepreneurship.
I know you are always focusing on talent initiatives, the latest on the educator internship initiative.
Yeah, you know, part of our job we think, is to make sure that the kinds of jobs that are needed are understood by the folks that are educating our kids. So that if somebody does come up to them and say, I want to be a software engineer, that the counselor or the teacher understands what that means. And so we started a couple of years ago doing essentially teacher internships in the summertime, where teachers come in and spend a week at a business learning what it's like to operate in that business, so that when they are giving advice to students, they have a better feel for what's going on. And so we had, I think, 75 teachers this year in, I don't know, 50 or 60 different businesses, and they spend a week there learning about what it's like to do business. And it really has opened their eyes, and in many cases even opened the businesses' eyes to how they can be a bit more explicit about the kind of skill sets that they need and the kind of training that their students need.
MCC is part of that, yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
And we're talking about primarily the STEM fields, right?
Yes, almost all of the work that we're doing is either science, technology, engineering, or math, and some manufacturing. Of course, a lot of the STEM stuff ends up falling into manufacturing anyway, but manufacturing was another big piece of that.
Talk next a little bit about the Summer Connector program. We have chatted about that before.
Yeah, it used to be, well, this was all started when we realized that there were a lot of companies that would have interns here throughout the summertime. And there's circumstances were interesting where they'd bring an intern in from out of town, and the intern would stay at a hotel or maybe a dorm somewhere.
5 o'clock hits and see you tomorrow.
Yeah, they go get their own dinner and they go home. And if they're lucky, there's some social stuff going on within that company, but they're really limited knowing about Omaha or knowing about other people in town to really their own devices. How do we find them? So a few years ago, we said, why don't we put all of these kids in one dorm at UNO and have social events for them throughout the summer, take them to a baseball game, take them to the swim trials when they were here, take them to concerts, and they can get to know other interns, they can get to know the community more, and chances are they might have fonder feelings about actually accepting a job here if one were offered by one of the companies.
And the results, 70% of them say that if they had an opportunity,
yes,
they'd come, right?
And that was as low as 40% when we started this. So we know that this is impactful. So this last couple of years, we've realized that we don't really need to organize new events as much as we need to expose all of these interns to what's already going on in the market. There's also already so many things going on here. So we organize that effort now to make sure that they all know what's going on and that we use existing events for ways that they can get together.
Well, this is important stuff because that's been a problem. Graduates.
Yeah, the whole brain drain
let's
stuff.
educate them and say sayonara, we'll see you.
Right, I mean, brain drain is tough. And it's even stranger when you got students coming in here from, say Valparaiso University, and they're here on an internship. They wouldn't even have had an experience here going to school, and so they're here because the Med Center wanted to have them as an intern, or UP wanted them as an intern. So they don't know anything about Omaha. So we have a very narrow amount of time that we can expose them to this market and to this place as a place to live. So it's worked really well.
Talk about putting Omaha's name on Omaha Eppley International Airport. The brand awareness campaign goes on a couple of fronts. The We Don't Coast license plates. How's that going?
Yeah, we are trying to. Every year we do some kind of a special project with We Don't Coast, something relatively large. Now you see billboards all the time. You hear radio spots all the time. We have some TV spots out there. A lot of social media on We Don't Coast. But we thought, what if we had our own We Don't Coast license plates too? And so the license plate has a Nebraska We Don't Coast. They're white with black lettering on it. They have some gray hashtagging kind of in the corner. And to get that, we had to have 250 people sign up for essentially personalized license plates that say We Don't Coast. We actually hit that number this week. And so,
which is yours? You don't coast to 001?
Yep. And so I'm hoping that I get the 001 license plate. Who knows if I do or not, but it'd be cool to have that one. So we're now in the process of getting all the appropriate paperwork together, submitting all of those 250, and getting those license plates back and getting them on people's cars. We're not limited to 250. 250 was the minimum that they could do. So now we're going to do as many as people want. So you can contact the chamber, and we can let you know how to sign up for We Don't Coast license plate.
Yeah, there it is,
Really
the
cool.
001.
Yeah, you can see the hashtag stuff or the hashing on the corner.
Oh, yeah.
And so it looks a lot like all the other kind of graphics that we do with We Don't Coast. It's a lot of fun.
All about brand awareness. And some of the events have been just unbelievable in terms of their value. What, $74 million, was that the figure for the swim trials?
Yeah, so the swim trials is a unique effort. Of course, it's branded with USA Swimming, and it's branded with the Olympics, as you would expect. And so if you look at the economic impact of those swim trials when they were here in town, it was about $74 million, which is huge for 10 days of swimming. In addition to that, they have a thing called the Aqua Zone, which is kind of a fan zone that you can go in and learn all about swimming and play games and all those kind of things. And each year we have accepted the notion of when a swimmer wins a gold medal or a bronze or a silver, they receive the medal, and then they receive some flowers, and then they receive a stuffed animal. So 4 years ago, the stuffed animal had a big O exclamation point on it.
Yeah.
It was a teddy bear. This year, the stuffed animal is a shark that has a kerchief on it that says, "Omaha, we don't coast, we swim fast." Now, if you've been watching any of our video stuff and our billboard stuff over the past 3 or 4 years, you've noticed that my favorite billboard is "Omaha, we don't coast." It's been 55,780 days since our last shark attack. Poking fun at ourselves.
Yeah.
We don't have sharks here. We don't have all the other problems you have on the West Coast either.
That's right.
So we took that, and we've had a booth at the Aqua Zone. We had one of our graphics guys dressed up in a shark suit, taking pictures with people. They could take a picture with the big shark sculpture we had. People could put shark hats on. We gave away shark stuffed animals to kids. We have shark key rings that people have that We Don't Coast on it. And it was a huge hit because, as it turns out, a lot of swim teams actually use shark in their names.
Yeah,
and
sure.
so all these 90% of the people that came to the swim trials aren't from Omaha. And a lot of those people are swimmers, and they all know about shark teams. And so the sharks were a big hit. So We Don't Coast was a big deal for us during the swim trials, and we think it really paid dividends again.
Only about 45 seconds left. You alluded to the legislative agenda this year. Any highlights you want to talk about?
We'll continue to play in that space. We know that the budget's going to be a big challenge this next year because we're running a bit of a deficit. We got the surplus to cover it, so that's not a big problem. But we're not going to get the tax cuts probably that we all want in that kind of an environment. So we'll keep working on it, though.
Very good. Thanks, David. Do you want to knock this over now? I've knocked it over twice.
You're doing really well all by yourself. I'll let you do that. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Second quarter highlights, Greater Omaha Chamber of Commerce. See you.
Thanks, Ken.
Next time.
See you soon.
And thank you for being with us again on Metro and More. Our goal is to better acquaint you with the mission, leadership, and the reach of the college. I'm Kent Pavelka for Metropolitan Community College. If you have comments or questions about the program, please email us at metrovision@mccneb.edu. Thanks for watching.
This has been a Metrovision production produced by Metropolitan Community College.
This is where technology unites with vision. This is where the ingredients come together. This is where training links to experience. This is Metropolitan Community College, where students connect with jobs. Choose from more than 100 1- and 2-year career programs on campus and online. Get started at mccneb.edu. This is where innovation and community connect.